I've debated sending this for months. I'm not the type to believe in paranormal stuff, and I'm not dramatic enough to call what happened to me supernatural. But I do believe in dangerous people, and I believe some of them know how to hide in plain sight better than anything you've seen in horror movies. This happened last year, when I was living in a city with a late night train system. It ran until 1:45 a.m. I worked at a warehouse on the edge of town, and the only way home was a 12:58 a.m. train, and this is the one that nobody rode unless they had no other choice. This was the first night I saw him. I didn't think anything of it. He sat one row behind me, directly behind my right shoulder. He wasn't across the aisle or diagonal. He didn't even sit randomly. He literally sat right behind me. I only noticed because when the train hit a bump, his knee tapped the back of my seat. I glanced back. He was maybe in his mid-40s. He was wearing a dark jacket. He had his hood up and he was staring at the floor. Nothing unusual. But the next night, he was there again, and he sat in the same seat, with the same silence and the same posture. And both nights after that, he was always behind me, always alone, and always on the 12:58. I told myself it was just a coincidence. I said people have routines just like myself. Maybe he worked late too. This is when things got weird. One night, the train was emptier than usual. It was just me and him. And I sat in my usual spot, and he sat in his. But when the train went underground, the windows turned into mirrors, and in the reflection, I saw something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't looking at the floor or out of the window. He wasn't even dozing off. He was staring directly at me. Not at my reflection or the window, but directly at me. His head tilted slightly, like he was studying the back of my neck. I froze. I could not breathe or move. When the train came out of the tunnel, I turned around casually, or at least tried to, and he had already shifted his gaze back to the floor, like he knew exactly when the reflection would give him away. I got off at my usual stop, a small outdoor platform with one flickering streetlight. Normally he would stay on the train, but that night I heard footsteps behind me. They were slow and heavy. I didn't just turn around. I just walked faster. When I reached the stairs leading up to the street, I finally glanced back, and he was standing at the bottom of the steps. His hands were in his pocket, staring up at me. He was not moving nor blinking. He was just watching me. I hurried home. I locked every door and barely slept. The next night I took a different seat, far from my usual spot, but he still sat behind me. A week later, something happened that still makes my skin crawl. I was scrolling through my phone on the train, trying to distract myself. This is when the train hit a curve, and the reflection in the window shifted just enough for me to see him again. He was leaning forward slightly, like he was trying to read my screen. I tilted my phone away, but he leaned in further, so I locked my screen, but he sat back. I pretended to stretch and turn around, and he was already staring at the floor again. That's when I realized he was only still when I was looking, and he only moved when I wasn't. I finally worked up the courage to switch cars. When the train stopped at the next station, I got up and walked into the car ahead. I sat near the front. My heart was pounding. The door was closed, and the train started moving. I let out a breath of relief until I heard the door behind me slide open. He walked in. It wasn't fast. It wasn't slow either, just steady. He didn't sit behind me this time. He sat directly across from me, hands folded and staring at the floor. but every time the train passed through a tunnel, I saw his reflection. He wasn't looking at the floor, he was looking at me again. I didn't want to take the train anymore. I didn't have a car, and I couldn't afford ride shares every night. So I boarded the 1258 one last time. But he wasn't there this time. For the first time in weeks, I felt relief. I sat in my usual seat, put in my earbuds, tried to relax. Halfway home, the train lights flickered, and the PA system crackled, and a voice whispered, Car 3. I froze because I was in car 3, and the lights flickered again. When they came back on, he was sitting behind me. He was closer than ever, and I didn't turn around. I didn't even move. I just stared at the window reflection. He was leaning forward, inches from my neck, breathing slowly. Then he whispered so quietly that I thought I imagined it. He said, You finally stopped moving. The train screeched to a half at my station, and I bolted out of the doors and ran home without looking back. I reported him to transit security the next day. They checked the cameras, and they told me something that still keeps me up at night. They said you are the only person we see in your car every night. No one ever sits behind you. But I insisted. I begged them to keep checking, and they did, but they said they had the same result. There was no hooded figure in the car with me. There was no vision of anyone ever following me. It was just me. I was always alone. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know what breathed against my neck that final night. I moved cities 2 months later, and I haven't taken a train since. Sometimes when I'm walking home late, I swear I hear those same footsteps behind me, and they're always slow and heavy. If it's him again, I hope that he finds a different reason to move on. I've worked track maintenance for 11 years. I've seen rats the size of dogs, people sleeping in tunnels, and even a guy trying to film a music video at 3 a.m. But nothing prepared me for what I saw last month. We got a call about a sensor malfunction under the East Ridge Tunnel. I was assigned to check it out alone. This was the standard procedure for minor issues. The tunnel was dead silent. There was no train scheduled for hours, just the hum of electricity and the echo of my boots. Halfway in, my radio crackled. It said stop walking. This wasn't my supervisor's voice, or anyone I recognized. I froze, and the radio hissed again, and it said, It hears you. I turned the radio off and kept moving. I figured it was just interference because we've had this problem before. But this is when I heard it. There was a scraping sound. It was metal on concrete, slow and dragging. I shined my flashlight down the tracks. Something was crawling out from beneath the rails. At first, I thought it was a person, but the limbs were wrong. They were too long and too thin, and their joints were bending the wrong way. And somehow the skin looked wet and shiny, like it had been living under there for years. It lifted its head, and I swear to God, it had no eyes and just smooth skin where the sockets should have been. But it turned toward me anyway, like it could feel me. I backed away. It crawled toward me faster, so I ran. The thing moved like a spider, scraping along the rails. It was gaining on me, and I could hear it breathing. It was a wet, rattling sound. When I reached the service ladder, I climbed like my life depended on it, and the thing slammed into the wall below me. It was screeching. I didn't stop until I was out of the tunnel and back in the service room, and when I reported it, my supervisor went pale. He told me something I'll never forget. We sealed something under those tracks in 1989. If it's out, we're all in trouble. So I quit the next morning, and I don't go near tunnels anymore, not even as a passenger. Whatever they were doing down there, I don't want to know. and whatever I saw, I hope I don't see it again. I never written into a channel before, but after what happened to me last winter, I can't sleep unless I talk about it. If you decide to read this, please keep my name out of it. I don't want any of the transit authority recognizing me. I used to work the closing shift at a hotel downtown. My commute home required taking line 47. This was the last train of the night, the one that leaves at 12:32 a.m. Anyone who rides late night trains knows the vibe. The air is always quiet and stale. Sometimes the lights are flickering. It's the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. That night, the platform was empty except for one man. He stood at the far end, facing the tunnel, not moving or checking his phone. He wasn't even pacing. He was just patiently waiting. When the train arrived, I got into the second car, and the man got into the first car. The moment the doors closed, I felt something was off. The train did not lurch forward like usual. It glided almost too smoothly, like we weren't on tracks at all. I tried to shake it off, but then the lights dimmed. They didn't flicker, but they dimmed, like someone was slowly turning a dial. I looked up at the security camera dome in the corner. Inside the reflection, I saw something impossible. There were only two people in the entire train, me and the man from the platform, standing in the aisle of my car. But when I turned around, there was no one there. I checked the reflection again. This time he was closer. I stood up because my heart was pounding, and when I moved toward the intercom to call the conductor, before I could press the button, the train slammed to a stop so violently that I fell forward on my face. When I got up, the lights went out. It was pitch black. Then I heard the footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, coming down the aisle toward me. I scrambled backwards until my hand hit the door between the cars. I shoved it open and stumbled into the next car, where the man had originally boarded, but it was empty except for a single object sitting on the seat. It was the conductor's hat. It was old, dusty, and stained. So I picked it up without thinking, and the moment I did, the train lights snapped back on, and I was alone. The train was moving normally, and everything looked normal, except for the hat was still in my hands. And when I reached my stop, I practically dove out the door, and I did never look back. The next morning, I tried to return the hat to the station office. The old guy working the desk went pale when he saw it. He told me line 47 used to have a conductor who died on duty decades ago. He had a heart attack between the cars, and they found him standing upright. His hat was in his hand, like he was about to check tickets. Passengers reported seeing him for years afterwards, always on the last train, always watching. The old man asked me where I found the hat, and when I told him, he whispered, "Then he wasn't watching you, he was following you." I quit my job that afternoon, and I hadn't ridden a train past sunset ever since. Whoever that man was, I hope he may rest in peace, but I hope we never meet again. I am a nurse. I work nights, so I'm used to weird things. Sleep-deprived patients, empty hallways, and alarms that go off for no reason. But nothing in the hospital ever scared me like what happened on the train home. It was 2:14 a.m. I boarded the train like always. I was exhausted and half asleep. I sat in car 4. This was my usual spot. And about 10 minutes into the ride, the PA system crackled. It said next stop was car 9. I froze because I knew there was no car 9. Our trains only have 8. I looked around, and no one else reacted. No one even looked up. The train slowed and stopped, not at a station, but in the middle of the tunnel. and the doors slowly slid open with a hiss. Beyond them was a dimly lit corridor. It wasn't a platform. It had concrete walls, pipes overhead, and a faint dripping sound. Then a man stepped in. He wore a transit uniform from maybe the 1970s, faded blue, old patched, and scuffed shoes. He didn't look like anyone I had ever seen before. He just walked straight down the aisle, passing me without a glance. But when he passed, I felt something cold brush against my arm, like walking through a freezer. He reached the end of the car. He opened the door and stepped into the next one. I stood up out of curiosity, and I followed him. I really don't know why. Maybe I was exhausted, or maybe something else. When I entered the next car, it was empty. I mean, it was completely empty. There had no lights, the seats were torn, and there was graffiti everywhere. This wasn't car 5. This wasn't any car I have ever seen before. And at the far end, the man stood facing the wall. His head slowly turned toward me, but his body did not move. His face was wrong, like it was stretched way too thin, eyes too wide, and mouth too open. He whispered, and he said, "You weren't supposed to follow me." The lights flickered, and suddenly I was back in car 4, sitting in my seat, but my heart was racing. The train was pulling into my stop, and I ran home. The next day, I asked a transit worker about car 9. He told me something I wish I never heard, and they said car 9 was scrapped after the fire. Everyone inside had been passed away. Sometimes people say they see it again, but only on the late night runs. After this, I don't take the train anymore. I just simply take Uber. I don't care what the cost is. I'll never get on that train again.